Hey everyone, good afternoon and welcome back to Plain Speak, where we pick the brains of industry experts for a quick 30-minute chat on the intersections of customer service and technology. So today's Plain Speak guest is Brett Frazer, a customer experience executive with 24 years in customer experience success, delivering world-class operations, 20 of those in leadership roles. So you'll recognize a lot of these names, but after spending over a decade at Microsoft in CS, 8 years at Adobe across customer support and organizational development, and 7 years leading customer service and experience for Sunbasket, Brett most recently led the engagement consulting services for Arise Virtual Solutions. Here, among other services, they assess a company's customer support departments for maturity by looking at 10 core pillars of CS and help develop a strategic development roadmap. Super excited to have Brett here today because with his vast experience helping organizations of all sizes and scales assess and supercharge their customer support departments, we've turned today's conversation into a little bit more of an interactive workshop. So our goal today is for you to obtain insights into your organization's customer support teams and have things that you can take away and start making changes with ASAP. We'll employ the core principle from Brett's upcoming book around the 5 A's of successful customer engagement. So for those of you joining us at Plain Speak for the first time, my name is Liz Tai. I'm the CEO and founder of High Operator. We're a leading customer support solution that scales dynamically based on a company's evolving needs. Our proprietary customer support engine, HiQ, leverages generative AI to tackle even the most complex customer requests. So a very quick housekeeping note, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the chat wherever you're watching. If we don't get to them during the session, we'll reach out afterwards or post answers on LinkedIn. So Brett, it is fantastic to have you here today. I've been very grateful for your advice over the years and mentorship, and I'm excited for the audience to learn how to analyze and level up their CX departments. So I know you're joining us from
Thanks
somewhere
very much
today. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here, Liz, and to continue the conversation. Like I said, we've been chatting for a number of years, and I'm a big fan of High Operator and what you've developed over the period of time. Just apologies in advance for everyone if I freeze a little bit. I'm on the road and traveling, and you know how those internet connections can be sometimes. So hopefully we'll get through the session without any freezes, but if not, I'll jump back in and we'll pick up and go as quickly as we can. But really looking forward to just chatting today, like you said, about a couple of things that hopefully those joining in or watching later, you get to take away some perspectives and some things that you can put into play when it comes to looking at AI. And automation and what types of things and then an approach to those engagements with your customers, somewhat in AI, but mostly around that human connection.
I love it because it's all at the end of the day about human connection, right? So Brett, before we jump into those tactics and strategies, set the stage for us a little bit. I know you talk a lot about turning call centers and contact centers into value centers and believe that technology is a key enabler to making that ultimate goal happen. Can you give us just a little bit of context into how to conceptualize this and how to make that happen?
Absolutely. I think contact centers for a long time have really been focused on, and especially leadership of contact centers, on reducing costs. And we obviously know that we want to optimize and make sure that there's great value that's coming to an organization from that contact center, and doing so in a way that that really is focused on value. And I think that while there are clear opportunities to leverage technology and leverage savings from automation, and that's going to bring value into an organization, I think there's also a huge opportunity, or I know there's a huge opportunity that contact centers can bring value back into the organization. Mm-hmm. And I key specifically on the word value rather than revenue, because not every contact center has that revenue opportunity. Some of them have that ability to set up the thing of the upsell.
Well, Brett joins us back here again. It's really interesting to think about the idea of value versus revenue, right? Because I think so much of this session is going to be about keying off of what is within the scope of contact centers and your org specifically, and how we can use that, as sort of the ultimate metric for success to align everything around a bit.
Or cross-sell, but as we... Sorry about that. There we go.
No. Welcome back. Welcome back. We did it.
Yes, we did. Yeah, so that value versus revenue, right? And I think it really does come down to that piece of it, really truly understanding what are the points of value that can be brought back into the organization. And so we'll do that. So today, I think there's two things to walk away with. Firstly, is that approach to how to recognize and identify what are the optimal engagements that you can look at, that you can start down that automation and the savings path of customer service. And then how you can reinvest those savings into the engagements that you're left with your customers in a human-to-human interaction to really bring that value back into the organization. So hopefully those are the two things that we'll be able to take away from today.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're talking about automation and then really connecting that sort of ecosystem in a sense, right, to make support a key part of the overall organism and bring value to the overall organization. Very cool. So maybe let's start with that sort of automation, right? Let's start with maybe the nuts and bolts workshop approach to how leaders can start to determine and tackle the idea of automation within their broader universe of contact types.
Absolutely. So from my experience, there's four considerations that really will help a leader to take into mind as you select what types of issues that are enabled or are going to be good for automation, whether that's AI generative automation, whether that's RPA automation, whether it's a self-service type of form through select boxes, and really looking at what's right for your customers and your particular issue types. These are considerations that at Sunbasket we used, and I know you spoke with Sean Satterfield a couple of weeks back, and together he and I were able to use this to automate over 55% of the volume that we received into Sunbasket and really drive that value back into the company from cost savings, but also how do we, as Sean talked about, create an element of where automation creates goodness for the customer and goodness for the organization. And we'll talk about an example there in a minute where you can use automation to potentially reduce costs of things like refunds or credits, etc. So the four considerations. The first one, and this one, is I know very big and clear to a friend of mine, Liz Oswell, who's been in the business for a long number of years. And hers is really understand your customer and what their preferences are. If you've got a customer set that's really technology focused and is big on trying to take care of things themselves, and that, then you've got more of an opportunity, more of a space, more of a scope to try and look at where your space is. If you've got a customer set that may be a little bit older, a little bit more focused on conversation, the type of product that you're looking for is really driven around a multi-touch and many back and forth types of things, then AM may not be the best thing for you in certain circumstances. And so the first part really stands with understanding who your customers are, what their preferences are, and the type of service that you're delivering to them. Once you've got that into play, and many organizations are going to have that opportunity somewhere in that scope to then determine, okay, there are some things that our customers are going to be able to want to take care of themselves. Once you've got that, then the next three things to look at is there a significant volume of that particular issue type? And especially early on, you want to tackle things that you've got significant volume, because that's where you're going to get that big impact of cost. Looking at things that are small volume isn't, and nickel and diming to start. That's where you'll get to eventually, where you've got those first big ones. But really start off with what's our biggest volume. Once you've got that volume, then you pair it with, is there a highly repeatable solution that has a high customer acceptance? So if you've got a big volume, but the solutions are varied,
All right, we'll give Brett a opportunity to rejoin back in here in a second, but it is a good point, right? You're looking at a significant volume, but you need there to be some sort of repeatability within that volume. Oftentimes at High Operator, we work with
On
clients
what it
who
is
have
quite dramatically.
Hey, Brett. In the interim, folks, for those of y'all listening along, I think part of what's really exciting about this session is going to be to really try and transfer as much of it as possible into repeatable actions. So if you do have questions, thoughts, comments, examples of automation gone really right or really wrong, please do drop them in the comments. Please do drop them in the questions. We'd love to have those follow-up points to continue the session on beyond lunch today as well. But a lot of times, maybe to sort of double click on this issue before Brett comes back, is at High Operator, we tend to work with clients who have an eye towards automation. But a lot of times what we've started to look down on is it's not just volume, it's also, are we able to sort of design repeatable processes around that? Haney, thank you for asking. Sorry if I'm butchering your pronunciation of your name, but do we have to know first the reason for the high volume before we start the automation? Brett, welcome back.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm out of control here. We all live in this interesting digital world. So it sounds like you had a really interesting question around volume and understanding that. And I think I picked up on a little bit of it there. You're right. Understanding why you're getting the volume is key. I think, when we look at cost savings opportunity, generative AI and automation is definitely one way to help when the volume occurs. But I think to the question there, the key element is understanding why. And the biggest opportunity for cost savings in customer service is figuring out how you can stop the problems from happening in the first place. So in addition to that, automate, there's also that piece of working back upstream in the organization. Once you've got that volume of, hey, here's our top driver, what can we do to mitigate this from happening in the first place? And so that's another opportunity, once you've got that relationship and those connections within the organization, to really help improve that customer experience, is to look at how do you stop it from happening in the first place? How do you look at where upstream the reason for the contact is occurring and prevent that by fixing something or improving education or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, so those are the first two, the high volume, the high repeatable solution that has a good acceptance rate. Again, if you've got a low acceptance rate, even if it's a highly repeatable solution, putting automation on front of it isn't going to be helpful as well. But where you've got those first two key areas, then it makes it a ripe option for potentially coming into automation. The third area that doesn't quite often get a lot of consideration, or I don't hear a lot of people talking about it occasionally, and Qualtrics put out a study earlier this year around the human experience that touched on this, is really looking at the emotional context of the issue type. The higher the emotional context, the more likely somebody is wanting to be able to speak to someone that can have a high trust capability that the solution is going to work for them. And so if it's something where it's a low emotional context, then they're probably more likely going to be able to accept and work with an automation solution. But if it's got a high emotional value to it, there's something around fear, or there's something around anxiety, then those types of things, you're probably going to want to have an option for a human, or as Sean talked about the last session, plain speak, even if you do have automation put in front of it, have a very simple and easy way for people to bounce out of the automation into a human interaction. Those kind of four key categories really is, what's your customer's preference? Have a high repeatable volume, or high volume that's got a highly repeatable solution with a high success rate or acceptance rate, and then understanding the emotional context. Once you've got those two, and the first one you get from understanding your customer and who the personas of your customer.
All right, let's see if Brett pops right back. Because I do think there's actually a lot here that I kind of want to double click a little bit on the idea of emotional context, because I think when we think about
the next two you can get from your helping customers with tagging. So you can get that from your data. You can get your highly repeatable solution acceptance from looking at your contact resolution rate from your customer surveys. And then the emotional context really is derived from a combination of things like your sentiment analysis, customer interviews, agent interviews, and then just your understanding around the product and how your customers are using it. And even then where I talk about emotional context, some emotions where there's a high emotional state may actually be really ripe for automation versus others. An example is debt collection. Debt collection has an emotion of shame around it. And shame comes from feeling that the person you're talking to, as nice as they may be, is going to look down on you because you're in this situation. And so that actually may be an area, and I know there's some companies that do some really fascinating work around using avatars in that space for customers to connect with when they're having debt collection type conversations, because you can't necessarily feel shame from a machine in the same way that you do from a human. And so it's not necessarily saying it's just high emotion that you should not automate. It's really understanding what that automation is. Well, sorry, that emotion is. So then once you've got those hypotheses, right, you've gone through, then you've kind of looked at your volume and say, okay, here's what we could automate. Take one or two, right? And then start running some A/B tests against them. Put them into play, run an A/B test, look and see what happens when you automate it versus you don't automate it. Look at the results, make sure you're getting the solutions that you're looking, the outcomes you're looking for. And then if you see response, roll it out and then start moving down your list. And Sean talked about a couple of weeks ago that we actually ended up with automation being one of our highest customer success when we looked at customer effort score, first contact resolution rates when we put those into play. And in many cases, we actually ended up, even when that contact still went to a human, at a higher rate in the automation than a human. And that was usually because when it went to a human, it might have happened for a second or a third time. And so there's some offsets. It wasn't just because a human was there. But when you do it well and when you do it with intention and you test into it, you make sure it works and be iterative on it, then you can create these great experiences in an automation space.
Fascinating. So I think what I'm hearing sort of thematically over and over again really is you have to know your customer. You have to really understand what metrics you're trying to affect, right? Is it, handling some of your high volume contacts? Is it really driving those repeatable solutions? You have to have sort of that North Star in mind. And then your second responsibility is to really understand all of the various tools at your disposal, right? Whether that is automation, AI, tactics, whatever that is, to really think about matching those together. I know we're running a little bit low on time, so we're going to keep moving here, but I think that North Star, right, is a little bit of what we're going to talk about, well, a lot bit of what we're going to talk about next, right? Your 5 A's of customer support. Tell me a little bit about the 5 A's and how leaders can use this framework to create the North Star and tackle that value you spoke about earlier.
Absolutely. So just before that, I'll do a little bit of a context before I go into the 5 A's. Where this came about was working through and really looking at where the industry's gone over the last few years. And with that focus on cost savings, a lot of work and time and motion studies, et cetera, did a lot of, let's get rid of what we think is the extraneous part of the conversation, just focus on assisting the customer. And then maybe we're going to ask them for something at the end of a cross-sell or an upsell. And I think sometimes we've gone a little too far in with the surgical knife and cut things out of the conversation that are really necessary that customers are looking for. And so that approach of kind of the next best logical step ignores that element of, again, the emotional mindset. When things go wrong, quite often there's an emotional context that come with it. And
All right, this is critical, so I'm going to give Brett a moment to rejoin here.
in order for customers to get to that logic, we can get through this next one without one more of those interruptions. So that emotional element, that acknowledgement. And so that's the first of the 5 A's, is really that acknowledgement. It's really addressing that emotional need that the customer comes on. It's acknowledging who they are in relation to the company, but acknowledging that what they are experiencing is a problem to themselves, at least a problem to them. And so it's that aspect of truly acknowledging where they are, the frustration that's caused, etc. And that's really in that first step of kind of bringing the person from that emotional state and being able to. And that can be just as simple as, Liz, as a new customer, I can totally understand how that's not what you expected out of your service, right? It's a very simple way of acknowledging that you're new, where you are in your status, acknowledging the frustration. You don't have to go into this big, huge apology and all those types of things, but it's just that very specific, a few things that are very relevant to the customer and that you hear and that's a problem for them. The next step in the process is alignment. And alignment has a few things that it can do with. It's an element, an opportunity to really align towards what's the actual outcome that the customer is looking for, not necessarily the path that they get there. Sometimes as customers, when we call a company, we tell them the problem that we're having, but we also say how we want it to be fixed. And sometimes that solution's available, sometimes it's not. If we ignore that in the upfront and we give them a solution that they didn't ask for, then they're less likely to accept that solution, even if it gets them to the same outcome that they're looking for. So the alignment phase provides the opportunity to really make sure that you're understanding all the situation for that customer and really get that situational awareness as an agent to really be able to understand what's their final outcome that they're looking for. And so that you can then be able to say, hey, yes, we've got a solution that can work for getting you to this outcome. It may not be the same one that you've suggested, but I think it's going to give you the same outcome you're looking for. Are you okay to explore that? What you do in that case is you're not just aligning on getting an understanding of the solution, but once you get to that aspect of I can help you, is you're now helping to align the customer and the agent against the problem instead of the customer against the agent and the problem, which is quite honestly where most of us come into most customer service engagements today. We think it's going to be a problem. We think it's going to be a battle against us and them. And so that alignment phase starts to be able to bring you on side. And so you can then move forward with the customer towards the assist. The next part, the assist, we're all familiar with that. That's really around using that situational awareness we have now in order to be able to provide the best solution to get to the customer to the outcome in a way that's going to be most acceptable. Now, if you stop there, you're a really good cost center, but you're leaving money on the table at that point. And so the opportunity is to move into that value center as to how can I start taking that engagement and really be able to say, now that I've created this opportunity, how do I get to that point then of creating value? A lot of companies may go straight from there into, okay, great, I've solved their problem. Now I can ask them something. Well, the reality is, if we've solved a problem, all we've done is solved a problem that we, at least in their mind, created for them in the first place. So we haven't built any reciprocity. We haven't built value with the customer yet to be able to draw back from. And so this next part is advice. It's right. What's some advice that I can give to the customer at this point that's going to be helpful for them in the future? Sometimes that's something that can be a next issue avoidance, and it's good for the company as well. Or it could be something relevant to where they are in their life cycle. It could be a product or a feature that they haven't utilized in their product yet that's going to be valuable for them, etc. Or it could be, hey, customers who have had this problem sometimes run into this problem, and I want to help you to make sure that you don't experience that in the future. So pretty much every opportunity can get to those first 4 of the 5 A's. The last one, the ask, and this is really where it comes to the unlock of the value. This is situational. If you get to this point and the customer's still kind of not in a, their sentiment's still low at this point, you really want to stop there. Mm-hmm. Or if the ask that you're going to
the ask is the part where you loop it back into the org. Let's give Brett a quick second here to come back. So I think part of what I'm excited about this framework as we think through it is that it really is kind of tool agnostic, right? This is the framework for customer success, looping it in, creating value.
You want to get
And
from a customer is a very high value ask.
And
Okay,
then
I thought I was going to be able to get through all 5 without that happening again.
Almost. All right, asks.
Almost. Okay, so the ask, this is really where you can loop it back around. And the ask is here, it's situational, like I said, it's knowing that you've got that right permission, you've built the right reciprocity, they're in the right sentiment to be able to ask. And the ask really, there's 4 things that I think you can do to build value back into the organization from an ask perspective. The obvious one is if you've got an upsell or a cross-sell opportunity or a renewal opportunity, right? In that case, that's driving direct revenue, right? And there's value for that. But there's 3 more that I know, because we've done this in Sunbasket, can drive that value. It's value for the company, it's value for the customer. It's also valuable for you as a customer service leader, because then it starts to build your value within the organization, increase your seat at the table, right? And really be able to be that partner for the organization and get sometimes more of that connection that you're looking for. So the first one is an ask for some kind of an action, some kind of a stickiness that creates that loyalty, or the company knows if a customer does this or that, they're more likely to renew or be a long-term customer. Then these are ways that you can use those opportunities where you've got the customer there to encourage them to take that action. It could be downloading and using an app. If we know that a customer who uses the app has a higher loyalty, a longer lifetime value, and we know that the customer hasn't downloaded the app from our CRM data, it's a great opportunity to ask, hey, I noticed you haven't used it. Can I help you with the download? Or is there any questions you have around it? It could be an element of a feature or a product that they haven't used yet. Or it could be as simple as asking them to leave a review. Hey, you said some great things about your experience. I know other customers would love to hear that. Would you be open to leaving a review for us? So that ask for an action is the first one. The second one is ask for information. Other parts of your organization are investing every day in drawing information from customers that they want to know, that helps them with product development decisions, marketing decisions, pricing decisions, etc. You've already invested time and money in getting the customer to that point. If you've built that capability, now you can ask them, say, hey, by the way, if you have a second, our marketing team is really interested from hearing from customers like you about X. What's your perspective on that? Or our product development team's about to launch a new feature, and they're really looking for some feedback from customers like you on how that look and feel. Would you be open to spending some time with them? That's an information and an action together. But ways that you can take that information and either build it into your CRM that you can draw off and then weekly feed that information back into the portions of your organization that are looking for and create that data for them. The last one is ask for awareness. And this is, again, sometimes for a marketing, do you know that we also have this? Or, hey, by the way, we've got this new campaign coming up in next month. Really, make sure to look out for it. Or we've got a new product feature that's going to be launching. Or if there's an email campaign that's going out, we all know that email open rates are dropping on a regular basis. If you've got something that your marketing team is really invested in, being able to say, hey, I know we don't always open these emails, but I really encourage you to open next one because there's going to be something really special in there, right? And that's awareness that, again, is creating that stickability, creating more connection with some of the other things that are coming out of the rest of the organization. So those 3 asks are really going to be beneficial for you as a leader to be able to go back to your organization and be able to show the value that you're bringing to them in a way that they're looking for, or they're spending money or investing already today, that's going to help to drive those metrics of long-term value, of stickability, of renewal rates, reduce your churn, etc.
Got to ask for that ask if it's appropriate.
Got to ask for the ask. Absolutely. And then sometimes you do some of these things yourself. You can start doing it and then bring it back to your department. And hey, I heard from the
All right.
first meeting that you're interested in this. I want to prove. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so you're looping it back around to, yeah, these are things that don't necessarily need to be super high level departmental. There are things that you can do sort of on your own with your team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Look, I know we just went through the five A's and hyperspeed. We'll make sure we redigest some of this information for any listeners who want to really dive deep, review, reach out to Brett. But maybe just to wrap up with one last, CX automation question here is, so what I love about the 5 A's is that it's really a framework. It's tool agnostic, right? It's a framework for success that you can then source tools into. So within that, as you look to the future of customer support and customer experience, what trends do you see driving your industry forward? And what's the right level of responsibility around adoption versus, temperance around AI, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it comes back to a little bit of what we talked about earlier. It's intention, right? Being truly intentional around what you adopt, how you adopt it, how you put it in play, making sure that what you put in really has value for your customers, value for your employees, and value for your organization. We talk a lot about this element of AI, and automation is going to take a lot of the mundane tasks away from agents and leave them with the ability to have more interesting and complex capability. Well, if that's the case, we truly then have a responsibility to our agents to be able to educate them, to be able to handle those more complex issues, to be able to truly ensure that the types of interactions that they're having really allow for that complexity. One of the things that I hear quite often is all around, well, hey, we want to reduce our average handle time and we're going to automate. Well, those things have a little bit of a dichotomy to each other. If you're getting rid of the simple complex issues, then you're leaving your agents with the more complex issues, which are going to take long. So as leaders, we truly need to understand what we're doing and not just look at metrics of hey, everything has to improve and get shorter. Yes, we will always look at where that value or that opportunity for reducing handle time, but I think it's more about how do we make sure that those contacts that we leave for our agents are truly bringing value to the organization, that we're giving our agents enough time to have those conversations effectively, and we're giving them the right support and education to do so. And that support sometimes is also going to come from AI, agent assist technology and tools to be able to provide them those prompts. I think there's a great opportunity to look at how the 5 A's can be incorporated. The acknowledgement phase, right? Mm-hmm. Pushing to the agent, where are they in their life cycle? What do we know about this customer that is valuable in the acknowledge phase? Looking in the assist, based on what the customer said, what's the right solution or the couple of solutions you can give them? What's got the highest element of an element? In the advice stage, again, showing what advice could be done. Because if you told this customer 2 weeks ago about the app, telling them again about the app, this engagement is not the right thing. Yeah. So really being able to utilize technology, both from a customer facing and an agent facing, to really enhance that experience, both in customer experience and employee experience. I think many customer experience leaders these days talk about the fact and really understand that in human-to-human engagement, the agent experience is a massive underpinning what that customer experience is going to be. I think it's an area that's been underinvested in for such a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not substitution, right? It's really how you bring the two together to really make a really good partnership. We like to think of it as the Iron Man suit for agents, but it really is, not one or the other, but really the marriage of both. Brett,
combination.
Yes. Really, really enjoyed having you here with us today. One last topic of the week question. So every week we have a rolling question. Yours is coming from Sean Satterfield from our last session, the customer service operations expert, most recently with you at Sunbasket. And he would like to know what sports team has the best haka.
Thanks, Sean. Easy setup there.
Oh no, this is the cliffhanger. All right, if Brett doesn't come back to us in a couple of seconds, we will actually post video of his favorite haka so you can check it out on your own. But let's see if we can get.
Yeah, as a New Zealander, I have to. Okay, we'll wrap this up here really quickly. So the men's rugby team is probably most famous, known for their haka and the kamate haka. But I'd really recommend anyone if it was looking online and trying to check out a haka, as well as looking at the All Blacks, look at the Black Ferns. The women's rugby team have an amazing haka. It's really, really special. But also, the Samoan, Fijian, and Tongan rugby teams had their own challenges as well. Each of them brings an amazing cultural aspect to it.
Love it. We're going to post those videos. And last question for you, Brett. What question would you like to ask our next session's guest, Sean Hubertia Convoy?
So Sean and I go back a while to Microsoft days. So I'd really like Sean to share advice that he would give to first-time customer service managers as they think of how the future of generative AI will impact their work, not just their customers, but their work themselves, how they utilize it in making themselves a better and more efficient customer service leader.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear that answer next week. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to spend some time with us today over your lunch break. If you have any customer support questions, I know there's a lot of juicy stuff we just touched the surface of today. Please reach out to us or to Brett. And please do come join us for our next Plain Speak on Wednesday, October 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we will be chatting with Sean Hubertia Convoy about how they navigated the fragmented logistics industry and how to understand complex customer support when you're dealing with really fragmented two-sided marketplaces. Excited for that. Thank you again, Brett, and see everyone soon.